What's up, everybody? We are back for another one. What's this video's topic? Yeah, I'm gonna go over how I layer bases and then a little bit on saturation later. There's a lot that goes into it, or let's say that can go into it, and layering plus harmonics, saturation, that kind of thing plays a huge part in developing a really good sound. So before we get started, this project is the Tekkerz rework I put out a while ago, or a week or two ago, and I think it basically shows exactly how I layer things and saturate. Anyway, enough about that. Let's listen to it. Just give you an idea. Sounds of the Yep, that's the gist of it. Okay, so why would you want to layer bases in the first place? What you're going to read and what is basically the point is you want more control. So you might have it just the sub under, say, 100 hertz, then a top layer of 100 hertz and above, or 100 to 300, 500, somewhere around there, and another cutoff and above. Basically, what this does is give you control, so you can either mess with each part in the frequency spectrum, keep like your sub really solid and low, and have everything on top is what you do your effects with. It basically, the options are endless, but the main thing you get is control. Take control. Now, you can do this one of two ways. First, make your sound, bounce it to audio, and then split it from there. So you bounce it to audio, split it up on 3 different tracks, or however many you want, and do your EQ crossovers again. Low cutting for the bass, high cutting for the high parts, and moving things around, affecting them however you want. That works. For me, I don't like commitment that early, so I like to keep my plugins open and be able to still mess with the synth as I'm going, processing, creating the track. I'm very much a do everything at once kind of person instead of make the sounds ahead of time, then drop them in a project later. But you might be the opposite. Again, there's all these ways to suit your own workflow. The other way is my way. So like I have all 4 of these tracks are basically the same synth patch in silent. Let's play it with no plugins. That doesn't really do anything. It's very much a bass sound, so it doesn't really come across on the high notes. See, you kind of hear it already, what I'm getting at least a sound that speaks, has a bit of color, a bit of harmonics, not a sine wave, a triangle wave, so it has a little bit more edge to it. It speaks a bit more through speakers, and it helps form a good bass. Then I distort it just a little bit with distortion, without distortion. Again, distortion is your friend for squeaking out extra harmonics so it pokes through. It has a bit more movement, especially how this one pitches up and down. Those really pop through speakers when you have those extra harmonics, which we'll get to later. And what I normally do, how it normally starts, is it has trash on it. Help it speak a bit more. Really distorting like this mid area to help those harmonics pop through. All right, and normally I have some noise in there too. It's out of this because this is just sub. But I have all that cut off. But when it's like going and really distorted, it really come through really crunchy, really good top end sizzle from all that noise. But it's nice and cut off because I have it basically turned down and not doing much up there, just to tame the sound. But anyway, so that same patch basically is on all 4 of these layers. And what you get is you have these two subs, which is the low end of this little riff. Yep. Same two patches, except this one, sub 2, has a different envelope for a more pulsy kind of 808 sound. Just to give you an idea. Then the top layers are those same sounds, but the higher frequencies, so they cut through a bit more. See? Yep. And together. Now these higher sounds, like I said, you want control. Higher half of the sound, that's where even more effects and EQing to get the right sound basically comes from. And that's the whole point of layering. You want control. You want a solid low end, and you want your top to have the movement or whatever else. You will have movement in the low end, but you're not going to go necessarily crazy with the reverbs, delays, extra effects. And having like a disjoint between the top and the bottom can sometimes add even cooler effects between the two and give you a bit more character, a bit more movement. Yeah. So what we got? And that's basically how I layer things. There's always the sub and then there's the top. These are split up because this second group is a more punchy sound. On this, especially, like to get that like woo sound, I have LFO tool going. Yeah, but I don't have it on the sub end. Like I had it, but it's disabled. And what that does is you get the punch in the sub and like the top of the sub area. You get, so it has like kind of a kick feel, a nice pulse feel. But then the top has the wub, basically. But you combine them together and you still get the punch. You still get the punch of the bass coming in, especially when there's no kick right there. And you still get the movement of like the top wub sound. Wub is scientific. Yeah. So that's another reason to layer. And again, all about control. Now, what really makes these bass sounds is saturation. And what saturation do is you're basically introducing harmonics. So with sound, you have your fundamental note, then you have overtones or harmonics. Let me just show you. So we have a sine wave, right? Let's open up span and change it so you can see a bit better. So that's your fundamental, right? And it's going through some, like my mastering plugins, and mixing stuff that adds a bit more harmonics and overtones. And that's like what those are, you see? Those. Now, if we distort it, let's go from no distortion. Start adding distortion. It's overdrive. You see those? You can hear it. Those are all the harmonics and overtones. Basically, saturating would be like really low, mild distortion. And it helps speak through small speakers, little tiny iPhone earbuds, stuff like that, your phone. And if you can crush it and you get distortion. But that's basically what you're doing. Those upper harmonics are what really speak and add movement to a sound. Like again, all these patches are going through isotope trash, which is so those, and you can see them right there. You got the fundamental down there at the bottom in the sub area, then you have each little overtone. Now, without that, it just sounds a bit weak. But add it there and then not have it bypassed. Yeah, now it speaks a bit more at the top, and when it moves with it in conjunction with the fundamental. So you can really have good movement in the bottom area. Another thing I didn't specify, like these top layers are in stereo. So that's another good thing for layering. You can have your sub, smack dab mono, right in the middle. And your top layer above, for me, is about 150 hertz, 100 hertz. Anything above that can be stereo within reason, you know? Not the program reason, but in like the idea of being reasonable. But yeah, so that's another thing. And then I put it in reverb, add some delays to get more wideness. You have that. You can just hear it speaking. Now, if we have all, let's say these two going at once. With that saturation, it really speaks. And that's really what makes the sound the sound. And then here on the mix bus, or the bus where all these bass sounds are going to, I also have Fab Filter Saturn doing some gentle saturation, as it says, on the low end and on the top. I just like, for me, it's subtle. It's just to add effect. It's to help it pop through. It's not to dominate the sound or the mix. It's so you can hear it, so it speaks. And if you disable it, it's okay, but it's not the best. So this is disabled. Right? Okay. I mean, it's okay. But it adds that extra little bit, that seasoning, that zest, that top end, the crunchy, good stuff. You know, it's icing on the cake. The sound by itself is the cake. It's good. It'll fill you up. It does its job. But the icing, it's what makes it good. It's how you say happy birthday or I'm sorry your cat died. I don't know. You see, you can really hear it in the top end. It's really just enhancing. It's adding just a little bit more flavor, a bit more texture up top. And that pokes through the mix, especially when this is all on its own. If this was like covered in pads or something else, it might not be as necessary or useful. But because it's on its own, you really need that sound to speak. And the only way to get really low frequencies to speak in the higher range is saturation and distortion. That's really the only way. So we can just solo it and you can hear it. Yep. And that is it, basically. I do that process about just about every track. You know, it's all subtle layers. You don't want to like do it way too much on one sound or another, unless it calls for that creatively. But these are more mixing parts for me, this saturation and stuff. I might do it early on, but it's so things fit together, speak how they're supposed to later. And it's all you. It's all up to you how you want to use this. A lot of times I don't do it. This is the main sound of the track, so I need to do it, in my opinion. Also, to match the original, because this is a rework, remix, whatever. The original does the exact same thing. And I really had to think about that when I wanted to recreate the sound. So, to wrap things up, that is how I layer bass sounds and how I add a little bit of seasoning to the dish. A little bit of distortion, some harmonics. Yeah, hope that helps. Let's play out the track for a little bit.
Sounds of the
That's what you get from saturation and stuff. Like it filters down, you don't get the really high stuff, but you still hear it, you get that movement, you get that feeling, you know? It's not just hitting a low bass sound. It pops out. And on a huge system, it moves because those waves are basically, sound waves are basically the size of you when they're coming through that speaker at such a low wavelength. So you're going to get hit with the bass and you're going to like physically feel it. That's why people like bass music and I like drum and bass. So anyway, enough about that. Any comments? Leave them in the comments. Join us over on Discord. If you got any questions for me, any ideas for future topics, as always, let me know. And that's about it. That's it for me. I will see you in the next one. Yep.
Take control.